the words of Rabbi Sidney Axelrod. A flood of memories overwhelms me as we go about this temple grounds. So many thoughts and so many feelings. There are so many people who have given of themselves in so many ways to Congregation Beth Am, to our faith and people and community. We, as part of Beth Am, know very vividly who has worked so hard to make Beth Am what it is. There is a movement to name this area after so-and-so and another area after someone else, but somehow the temptation was overcome with the feeling that Beth Am is truly a house of the people, and everyone is a part of Beth Am. Someone said to me, "You don't see any names, it's anonymous." To me, it isn't anonymous. To me, I see so many people who are willing to give far beyond their egos, thinking in terms of Jewish life of their children, of future generations, and hoping that people would continue to enjoy. He continued, "In a way, I see so many faces before me, people who have risen above self and who have invested self in our people and in our faith. Without them, I would not have been able to do what I have done to serve this congregation." Those words were spoken by Rabbi Axelrod in 1993, when Axelrod created a video tour of Congregation Beth Am, a project coordinated by F. Cannon and Ron Schilling. If you want to find it, it lives on the Beth Am webpage. Raise your hand if you were married by Rabbi Axelrod. Right. Very nice. Raise your hand if Rabbi Axelrod officiated at a bar mitzvah or baby naming of you or your children or your grandchildren. Right. Raise your hand if Rabbi Axelrod officiated the funeral of a loved one, a parent, a spouse. Tonight, on this special weekend, it's a delight to celebrate the legacy of Rabbi Sidney Axelrod and the entire Axelrod family with our annual Axelrod lecture, a lecture committed to social justice and social advocacy. It's unique as a synagogue to have both a scholar in residence every year, as well as a social justice advocate in residence every year. And what a statement that we as a community continue to commit to that legacy. It's a special delight to say hi to Lisa Axelrod. Thank you so much for being here on this lovely Shabbat. Audrey was with us earlier today, and to everyone, we salute a Beth Am community that misses his presence so much. And we are thrilled to welcome as the 5783 Axelrod lecturer, Shira Zemel. Shira Zemel is the co-director of the National Council of Jewish Women's Abortion Access Campaign, the Jewish Movement for Reproductive Health, Rights, and Justice. In this role, Shira activates and mobilizes the Jewish community to take action for abortion access. For too long, the American narrative about religion and abortion has ignored Jewish voices, and it's past time for that to end. And the NCJW is the movement to making it clear that Jews support reproductive freedom. As a community, as a Beth Am synagogue, we know that many who protest reproductive justice are often motivated by their own religious beliefs, and oftentimes seek to impose their views on others. However, the Shabbat is a belief in a recognition that every person is his or her own moral decision maker, allowed to make their own decisions based on their own beliefs and consciousness. Our tradition supports compassion, justice, and dignity for all women, and instructs us to care for the needy, the stranger, and the vulnerable in our society. As a community of faith, we look forward to the day when easy and safe reproductive access is the reality for all people in our community and our country. Prior to working at NCJW, Shira has spent her career developing programs and campaigns that bring people together around a shared purpose and train leaders to bring their Jewish values into the public square, including working for many years as a member of the Reform Movement at the Religious Action Center in Washington, D.C. She serves on the Arch Board, which is a local abortion fund serving patients seeking care in Northern Virginia, where she lives. And she says when she's not getting into good trouble and fighting for a just world, she enjoys curating feminist yard signs for her front lawn, listening to news and political podcasts, working on seasonal craft projects, preferably with her 2 young children. And she's here tonight with her husband, Adam. And I know many of her family members are streaming because Shira and I have been friends for nearly 15 years, since I was a rabbinical intern at Temple Micah in Washington, D.C., where she happened to be working at that time. And so it's a delight to have her here at Beth Am this evening. And I know Shira well enough to say, if you have little ones out there, there are some activity bags in the back that people can grab. Actually, you don't even have to be little. If you need, you can grab one of the activity bags in the back with some activities, or you need to sneak out. We entirely understand, but it's a delight to have Shira at Beth Am this Shabbat.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I am really honored to be here this Shabbat, and it's true, I have family watching from the East Coast, so hello to them too. As Rabbi Prosnett said, I first became friends with Rabbi Prosnett the summer of 2009 in DC when he was a rabbinical student and I was temping in the front office of my synagogue, Temple Micah, spending the summer recovering from a foot surgery. And Rabbi Prosnett, would not surprise you to learn, he was the most fun summer colleague. He'd often come to the front office. You found tchotchkes around the office and would juggle for us. And so over the years, I've always looked forward to seeing Rabbi Prosnett when he and Rabbi Wattenmaker would bring your confirmation class to Washington, D.C. for the conference that I was part of in my previous role at the Religious Action Center. And it's through your amazing students, your confirmation students, that I feel I've come to grow a connection to this community from a distance. Thank you so much to the Axelrod family in memory of your father, Rabbi Axelrod, for making this opportunity for me to come here, and Mazel Tov, Colin, and your family on your bar mitzvah. My grandfather, Alfred J. Sherman, was an OBGYN in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. As I understand it, he was one of the founding physicians of Planned Parenthood in central Pennsylvania. Growing up, I would visit Harrisburg, and we couldn't go anywhere there without someone telling us that I should be so proud of my grandfather who delivered them or delivered their children. Since the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade this summer, I've been thinking about my childhood trips to my mom's hometown, how warmly and gratefully women would speak about Dr. Sherman, my grandfather, delivering their babies. As a kid, I didn't get it. But now I've been pregnant myself 4 times. I've delivered 2 children and experienced 2 miscarriages, one of which was medically very complicated. So now I much better appreciate the gift these people would share when they'd introduce themselves during our trips to Harrisburg by way of connection to my Grandpa Sherman, their OBGYN. And I've been wondering how many people would see us and not share how my grandfather helped them when they needed to terminate a pregnancy. I so wish our society cared for and supported people who have sought abortions so they didn't feel the need to keep their stories in the shadows. Bringing these stories out of the shadows is part of what has compelled the work of NCJW. For more than a century, National Council of Jewish Women has boldly imagined and worked towards a world where women, children, and families are fully valued and supported. 15 months ago, NCJW launched the Jews for Abortion Access campaign, and I began in my role as co-director of this effort. We launched the Jewish Fund for Abortion Access and partnered with the National Abortion Federation, the nation's largest multilingual 24/7 abortion assistance hotline, to pair patients with the funding and resources they need to obtain an abortion. Last month, the Jewish Fund for Abortion Access reached $1 million raised. This is our community, donors across the country, many of you I'm sure here tonight, showing up as Jews to meet this urgent moment. 24% of women in this country will have an abortion by age 45. That's 1 in 4. We all love someone who has had an abortion. If you think you don't, it's likely more accurate that you just don't know someone who has shared their abortion story with you. And if you have had an abortion and you've shared these stories with anyone in your life, you're giving them a gift. On this issue, in the fight for reproductive justice, we must make the personal political, because this isn't actually a political issue. It's a healthcare issue and a matter of personal dignity and bodily autonomy. When we share our stories, we reclaim the issue from those who seek to divorce it from the lived reality of so many pregnant people in our country and so many others for whom the stakes of this question do not exist on a ballot, but in their day-to-day lives. For more than half a year, safe and vital abortion care has been virtually inaccessible to millions of people who need it. Let us be clear. These issues affect anyone who is pregnant or ever wants to become pregnant, as they're not stopping with abortions. Miscarriage care, IVF treatment, birth control, it's all on the line. Forcing one person to give birth is one person too many, but millions of Americans are impacted by this past June's Supreme Court decision. And it hits moms at a time when they're out of the workforce in the highest numbers we've experienced in 40 years in the US. The deck is stacked against raising children and supporting a family. Most states don't have family leave like you have in California. We as a country lack affordable quality childcare. We've got politicians who refuse to fund childhood nutrition in this country. We've got politicians who refuse to raise the federal minimum wage, with working parents holding down multiple jobs. And this impact disproportionately affects Black women and other people of color. The leaders of the Black-led reproductive justice movement have long reminded us that the needs, interests, and leadership of those most impacted, most harmed, must be at the center of any movement for justice. The reproductive justice movement itself came out of knowing that the white feminist movement had failed women of color, particularly Black and Indigenous women, with its emphasis on personal choice and not structural access. The Sister Song Woman of Color Reproductive Justice Collective defines reproductive justice as, quote, the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. These sound like Jewish values, too. For our movement to be successful, the time has come for us to think bigger, to broaden and deepen our work. It's time to write a new chapter. The Jewish community has long supported abortion access, but there is enormous collective power in education and true mobilization of our Jewish community. I join you tonight to mark the annual Repro Shabbat, observed each year on Shabbat Mishpatim, because our Torah portion this week includes verses 22 to 25 of chapter 1 of the book of Exodus. Quote, when men fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined according as the woman's husband may exact from him the payment to be based on reckoning. But if other damage ensues, the penalty shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. In other words, if someone accidentally causes a miscarriage to take place, they are obligated to pay financial reparations only. The case is not treated as manslaughter. The other damage that would demand the death penalty, life for life, would be the death of the pregnant person or some other serious punishment related to the damage caused, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. So here the fetus is not regarded as having the full status of personhood. Causing the end of a pregnancy here is simply in a different category. Put another way, there is no such concept as fetal personhood in Judaism. These verses are commonly considered the foundation of Judaism's approach to reproductive health, rights, and justice. These are the verses the Jewish communities will read across the globe the Shabbat, and why we honor Repro Shabbat each year on Shabbat Mishpatim. read these words and know that our ancient Jewish tradition offers a radically different theological understanding of the status of a fetus than the very particular Christian theology being weaponized by the religious right to stake a moral argument around the question of abortion. This passage in the Torah raises questions about the way our American reproductive laws intersect with our First Amendment rights as Jews. And these verses from Exodus are very convenient when making a religious argument around questions of where life begins, of when life begins. Reading further, we find that rabbinic literature reaffirms this position when it asserts that the fetus is mere water for the first 40 days after conception, about 7 or 8 weeks by our counting, which is incidentally when 66% of abortions take place in the US. And that from there, the fetus is part of the pregnant person like her thigh. Again and again in our sources, we see that abortion is permitted and even required if the life of the pregnant person is at stake. Some rabbinic sages went even further, affirming an expansive idea of a healthy life that understood that there are many reasons that a person might get an abortion, that mental health needs were akin to physical health needs, that emotional pain is akin to physical pain, that a person's own experience matters. Jews can point back to centuries of tradition affirming the validity of abortion care and necessity of abortion access. So if you walk away with nothing else tonight, know that this is true. The text itself and subsequent centuries of rabbinic commentary all confirm it. Abortion is permitted and sometimes even required by Jewish law. But I will tell you now my truth. These verses from Exodus that we read the Shabbat do not motivate my work as a Jewish moral voice for abortion access. Attempting to answer questions like when does life begin or what does religion say about the status of a fetus, this is playing the opposition's game on the opposition's terms. My belief that reproductive freedom is a Jewish value does not come from Exodus or the Talmud. These are the same texts and rabbinic traditions which do not view women as equal to men. Reform Judaism exists for this very reason. Jewish thinkers in Enlightenment Europe developed a progressive idea for practicing their Judaism, engaged in the modern world, and rejecting old dogmas while staying rooted in our tradition. As Reformed Jews, we carry a Judaism informed by the Enlightenment. I first encountered the idea of Reform Judaism as a product of the Enlightenment in my Jewish history class when I spent a semester in Israel on NIFTY's EIE, now called Heller High School Study Abroad program. But then I realized I'd been learning about this idea from my dad, Rabbi Danny Zemel, for my entire life. This past October, he addressed the topic directly in his Yom Kippur sermon, which I'm going to quote right now. Quote, "The European Enlightenment brought us the search for scientific truths, a belief in human reasoning to solve problems, a commitment to freedom for all people, a drive for human understanding through tolerance of and respect for difference, and a vision of human moral progress. The very Judaism that we share and cherish, the Judaism that defines us, is impossible without the Enlightenment. It simply does not exist. Just as the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in the first century gave Judaism the opportunity to recreate itself in the rabbinic period, a Judaism that shed itself not only of animal sacrifice, but also of slavery, capital punishment, punishment by flogging, and so much more, so the Enlightenment recreated or reformed our own Judaism. Our Enlightenment Judaism created new theologies that reflect our belief about the way God does or does not act in history and in our own lives. We see our faith as a path to a moral life. We came to understand with clear eyes that there was no authentic Judaism that was not rooted in a universal morality that espoused equality for all creation. Our Judaism is an ongoing conversation with the Enlightenment, just as the true Enlightenment is an ongoing conversation and deliberation about science and truth and equality." End quote. We bring our Enlightenment Judaism to this moment and to this fight. Regardless of what is written in this week's Torah portion, we bring our enlightened Judaism with its commitment to freedom for all people and a drive for human understanding through tolerance of and respect for difference to this work. Our Enlightenment Judaism teaches us that we all stood equally at Sinai to receive Torah, As Jews, our prophetic tradition urges us to bring our individual voices of Torah into the public square and proclaim our moral vision to the world. We are proudly, loudly, Jewishly pro-abortion access. We are for the rights of all people to live in dignity and make decisions for their own lives, families, and well-being. Say abortion. It sounds simple. Maybe it sounds a little scary, or just easier to say reproductive rights or the rights for a woman to choose, but we need to destigmatize. When we let abortion opponents make abortion into a profane word, we allow their morality to define our language and shape our world. We allow them to send a message that abortion's about shame and sin, but we know the truth. Abortion is about bodily autonomy and agency and equity. My grandpa Sherman understood abortion is essential health care and should be treated and talked about as such. I hold him in my heart when I stand with you tonight, knowing each of us in our own way must be part of this movement. We need you with us. In Judaism, we are partners in an ongoing creation, working to create a world of wholeness, compassion, and justice. Shabbat is our weekly glimpse into what that finished world might look like. Shabbat is Jewish hope, bounded in time. So when I celebrate Repro Shabbat, I pause to remember that more than the words found in Mishpatim, Shabbat is the metaphor which encompasses Judaism's expansive vision of justice, a world made whole. So now I'm going to end with a prayer for this Repro Shabbat. God of our ancestors, Eloheinu Avotenu V'Imotenu, we affirm that you've created each of us in your sacred image, endowed with the inherent right to dignity and autonomy. We ask that you guide us towards a caring and loving community and nation that reveres this dignity in each of us. We affirm that reproductive freedom, the sacred right to own the personhood of one's own body, is a fundamental part of the just society for which we strive in your name. We ask that you endow us with the strength and resolve we need, because the path that lays ahead is challenging and we will need resilience, strength, and courage. We ask that you protect the most impacted and marginalized among us because it is they who are most at risk. We do this work in your name, O God, because we are the compassionate, loving creations of a compassionate, loving, and just God, and it is holy, sacred work. May our country become a place of liberty and justice for all, and may our care for one another include care and respect for each other's right to good and affordable health care, including abortion care, and the right to safely and securely as we each follow our path of conscience and the God we each do or do not believe in. Amen.
Amen.